Okay, everybody. Whoa, that's loud. I know some of you are still getting coffee in the back, and fine, continue, because I know that was a little bit of a process, but we'd like to get started. I'm Mark Worthington. And we have our three panelists today, Patrice Vermette, and yes, and Seibel, and Paul Austerberry.
Two are French speaking.
Oh, there you go, please.
And two are Canadians, and one American.
Thank you.
So it may get confusing.
So, the subject of this panel is setting the tone. That's a pretty broad topic, which was a little scary when Inbal asked me to do this. And so I thought about it a little bit, and what is that exactly? So I'm going to start with a brief definition that I came up with, and then we'll get into what our panelists think, which is more important. I mean, when we make sets, our first obligation is to just make the space. Many times, I would say literally from the script, or what is needed. So we're in a place, whatever that is, a home or an office or whatever it is, and we do this, and it can be quite literal. And then we have an obligation to make sure we understand the physical circumstances of the space, so that we can do the blocking and the actors can move through it. Or if it's an action sequence, we deal with the physical circumstances of that. It can be quite literal and prosaic. That's our first obligation. I think our more important obligation is to help the audience with the space think about the story and the characters. Help the audience with that. And a successful design, I think, helps the audience to feel and think, not just understand where they are, but feel and think about what the story is. And I think settings are best when they do that. So, I mean, I think a successful production design has the emotional impact of a brilliant acting performance, or the thematic depth and dramatic tension of a great script, or the focus and interpretive originality of the best direction when we're really doing our job. So for me, that's the sort of layer that we put on it that I would call tone. So to start with that, that's my little pitch. But now we really want to hear what other people think. So I'm going to ask our panelists, first question, basic. What do you think tone is in your practice, in design, how you approach it? Or you can pick another topic if you want.
No, I can go with that topic, but it's a very loose topic. Setting the tone, I see different things. I can tell about my personal experience is when I get a script. I'm a romantic. I need to fall in love. I'm also instinctive. And when I read a script, again, like in the previous panel, some panelists talked about like writing emotions next to the script that you're reading, just taking notes. How do I feel? What's the deeper meaning of specific scenes? What's the arc, the story, how people, and just like a DJ, try to get like an emotional line somehow. And then the other thing that comes to my mind after that is like, I really try to think outside the box. I try to very purposely try things that I challenges me, excites me, but not try to get, I don't know, it's like first of all, it's with the stories, try to get the codes, try to get the alphabet of the language that will fit, those feelings for the movie, whatever movie it is, and then start playing with shapes, drawing sketches, And with that, you know, like collecting images from my personal bank, from Google search, from libraries, from museum. I take pictures. I'm a lot inspired by like contemporary art, installation art, and then present something to the director very quickly, and try to set, you know, start the conversation with the director very, very, very soon, because then we can start playing together. And for me, it's important to see if we have at least what's the percentage of the same language we want to play in, you know. So is it going to be 50%, 80%, and then we start playing. So that's kind of setting the tone, I guess. If it makes sense, I don't know if it makes sense what I said. But
Great, great. Anne?
And so when I get a script and I read it, I start having emotion, when I read, there's some of the story who will press a button on me and bring me images. And I will read the whole script like that and have some emotion coming up. And then what I like to do is share with the director and see if, and try to put myself in his head and see if he has the same emotion. And so I like to discuss with the director very early on and share ideas. And then we'll gather everything and make like a sum up resume of our both ideas. I will do this kind of mood board I was doing when I was in India the first time, because it's as well a language to share with your team and with all the people in India who are not speaking English. So I started by, I was thrown in India alone for a director I didn't know, who wanted me because I was European, and he wanted to give to his film a double culture feel. So he brought me and a DOP, and we didn't know each other either. So I ended up in India having this script about an Indian story about a truck going down the desert, all Indian culture. And I immersed myself, like someone was telling before, not going to museum, but actually walking with an Indian person in Mumbai, in really dark area, the real Mumbai life, and immerse myself of this culture to see how I'm going to come up with my own personality and help the director to have, with me, to make this the tone, I would say, the tone of the whole movie, to set up a code or something which will be a mix of him and me in the film. And an example of the script, in the script there was something written, or oil air factory. And in my mind, I saw a factory like we have in Europe with, you know, these mechanized things. And I asked them to take me to air oil factory, and it was in a very dark street in Bombay. It was a room of like 20 square meters, full of rubbish and bags of really dirty thing, oily machine. And I realized that my perception of the set was, you know, bringing my own culture, you know, but it was not their culture. So it was really interesting for me to confront that. And from that, both the two culture, I came up with something which was a mix of both of them, and it was actually really interesting for the film. So that's how I set the tone. Or some other time, it's just one word. For Midnight in Paris, it was just come up with dualism, and it resumed a whole movie.
Great. Paul?
Well, I have to agree mostly with what everyone says about emotion in the script. Basically, the script is our guide. When you read it, there's a tone sort of set in the words, and we all read these things and we have a different idea in our minds. But the directors, maybe they've written the script or not, but they've chosen that script, and that's where I start with, of course. And my emotion will say, my tone can be told through the colors I see when I read particular parts of the script, or the architecture can really set the tone. It can be oppressive, it can be beautiful, it can be open, it can be closed. So it's those kinds of things that I try to think about when I'm reading the script. And of course, I have had the opportunity I've had the experience where it's gone against me, of course, because my version is definitely not the same as, we're reading the same script, my version is not what the director has seen, and I've lost, I've had an interview, and my tone, I've taken, my interpretation of the script is completely different than the interpretation of that director, and perhaps it was a good thing that I didn't get the job, because I can't imagine having to work for 6-8 months with someone who has a completely different version and vision, and we'd be fighting the whole time. I don't expect that we all have the same version or vision of the tone of the script, but at least you have to be somewhat compatible to begin with, and then we'd work together, and the tone will change, and we'll create the final version, hopefully.
I think it's important to get in the same, someone on the same page with the director early on, because then you don't want to be miserable, doing a production and you don't see eye to eye with the director. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because I'm going out of order. You'll find I do this. I'm more associative than linear. Later question in here, so I'll bring it up now. You've all worked with directors that have particular visions, obviously. So, for example, in Dune, with Midnight in Paris, obviously with Shape of Water. And they all have really distinctive looks, really distinctive stuff, really distinctive tones as films, but also those filmmakers. What was that experience like for you coming into, with like Denis and Woody Allen, with Guillermo, people with strong visions of their own? How do you navigate that process with the director when you're dealing with somebody sort of at that level of filmmaking? Is it more difficult? Is it easier? I mean, they're old friends, so it's easy, but how do you navigate that? Anne, jump in.
Yeah, for me, the question is not strange, but Woody Allen only resumed what he wanted in a couple of words, and that's all he gave me. And I had like a carte blanche, so it's very, very frightening when it's your second movie, and with such a great director. So it was really interesting. I wrote to him saying my vision is one thing, dualism, because I see it's Paris. I see Paris like a brain. There's a left brain, a right brain. So I explained to him all this, and in the movie we have the past, we have the contemporary, we have the night. He goes back in time at night. He's with his girlfriend during the day, and I visualize that like the intellectual right and the left, reverse of the brain, but for all the Cartesian. And that's how I wrote to him, and I see that's how I feel we should go and have two tone in the film. And I spoke with Darius Kanji as well about it, and we made this kind of decision. And he just answered this one phrase that, for me, it's very simple. You just a privileged graphic on the reality, and that was it. And then he said, okay, get some location and we'll see you 3 months' time. It was so it was just like I was left like that. So thank God I had that.
Kind of left on your own then.
And less on my own, and looking for location because there was no studio, and trying to find a nice location. And I even managed to make him go to somewhere it was not written in the script, because there was so many inside 20s that it's hard to find on location and revamp them with not a lot of, it's not a big budget, Woody Allen. So I managed to get him to a museum of foreign art to change from what he had written, and he went there, he changed the script, so it was this kind of relationship with him. Not it's carte blanche, so it's not like he's coming and say, I want this, no. So it was really interesting. But I think
I do have the same type of relationship with Denis. We've known each other since the 90s. We kind of professionally grown together with a small group of French-Canadian filmmakers. And we have a similar sense of aesthetics. And we have similar love of same type of music, same contemporary artist. So there's really a very strong shorthand. And Denis would show me photographs. On every movie, he would show me, like for Dune, for instance, it was Richard Avedon pictures. And then he says, show me, propose me. There's something, though, with Denis that design, and I strongly believe in that myself, design needs to have a function. So when we spoke earlier about the language, the definition of what language we're going to use, that is very, very important. So things need to look real, even though, let's say, we're in a fantasy world, like on Arrival or on Dune. Things need to look that they belong in a place, and to do that, you have to dissect, distill the script. And for a movie like Dune or Arrival was based on a short story called The Story of Your Life. Dune, well, we all know the books. I know how much Denis, for Dune, that was his childhood, best book, a life-changing book when he read that. He also did, when he was like 13 or 14, he did storyboards with his best friends. Like, he had 15 pages of storyboards. But Denis is a person who likes to collaborate with his collaborators. So he asks us to dream, and that's what's amazing working with him. He says, please dream, please propose me something different that we've never seen, and again, think about what the story is about. So in Dune, it's about colonialism, it's about ecology. It's about this young kid that is going to face a destiny that is bigger than he was ever expecting. So with all of that, then you say, okay, you take it basically, you follow the storyline. And then there's also, which was really cool, which was really interesting for me, is there's different planets, there's different families, there's different cultures. So then you think, okay, who are those people? How do they live? What's their economy? On Caladan, it's rice, wine, and fisheries. So, okay, well, you start with that. I mean, there's a long tradition. There's a medieval thing. Okay. And then the character of Paul is always going to be transitioning, like throughout the movie. So, and then it makes you think, how could I express that in a... I love semiotics. I love music, okay? And when I was a kid, I loved to. I've got an older brother and an older sister, and I love to look at the album covers. And you know, back then they were like some, okay, well, Abbey Road has some secret meaning, you know, and I like to plant things, you know, to have like these layers of like not subliminal, but just like these. So when I implement them when I work. So let's say like on Caladan, you know, all these doors are circular, but there's a reason. Yeah, of course it's stolen from the Chinese culture, but those are moon doors. It's like he's crossing all the time. He's going to change world, and then I like to play also with the weather. You know, we could, and the weather, reading the script and reading the story. The weather for me there's a season that I love, and it's also Denis' favorite season in Canada. It's fall. Fall is kind of leading towards the end of something, towards death, which is going to be the winter. Fall in Canada, especially on the East Coast and the West Coast, has amazing colors. There's those grays and that moss. You know, there's different types of greens, the bit of yellow in the trees, and the overcast all the time, you know. And so we said, wow, that would be the perfect weather for Caladan. So it's also like, yeah, it's instinct, it's research, and I don't know if I make sense right now what I'm saying. Am I answering the question? It's like I'm just going.
It's fine.
It's fine.
That's a great answer.
Okay, but yeah. Okay, yeah. For Denis, I remember now what the question was.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
I'm sorry.
as I said, we can be more associative than linear up here. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fine.
Okay.
Paul.
Well, I think your question was about different designers and, different directors and...
Yeah, it's like how do you... Sorry. Dealing with directors who ostensibly,
vision
you tell me
or-
if not, have very strong tonal visions themselves. What is that interaction and how do you navigate that?
I mean, I work with both, where a director doesn't have... Well, you've almost got carte blanche, like you were mentioning, Anne, and in a way that's perhaps more intimidating and more difficult, I find, than if you have restrictions or if you have a direction from a director who's very visual or the script is more visually described than others. And in a way, it depends on timing, of course, because we're all battling time, like Christian mentioned about, rolling, that's the cutoff time. We're all battling time. So if you have not a lot of time, it's probably best, and if the director has a vision they've come and explained and described to you to get going, and the script perhaps is also very descriptive, versus the other where if you have carte blanche, you've got this much to narrow down to here, but if your script is already here and you just hone it down to there, by the time that rolling happens, something hopefully is quite beautiful and quite concise and helps elevate this story. So Guillermo, as we all know, is a very visual director, and his scripts are often they're very emotional and they're very theatrical in a lot of ways, but we didn't have any time on Shape of Water. I came on with 10 weeks before shooting, and my art director, we didn't have the budget to have an art director earlier. We had an art director start 8 weeks before. So all I had to start with was a researcher for 2 weeks to start with before anyone else in the art department came on, because, as I said, his films tend to be quite, I don't know, I find them very theatrical and stylized and whatnot. So, but to help, this particular movie was set in 1962 during the Cold War, and that was quite important to the mood and the story. So the research, even though we know we're going to go beyond it and get quite stylized with everything, the research was very important, just to set the tone that we're talking about here, set the tone set the mood and set the period. And then I think with this kind of story you can go quite wild with it if you've at least got the basis of that environment and that world that you're ostensibly, beginning with. So this particular script, we were going to shoot it in black and white when I first had it. I worked with Guillermo on 3 films, but only one we realized. The other 2 were truncated and stopped for various reasons. One was before this. I worked with him, and then this one came, and I had to wait a long time for it. It was a black and white movie at the time, And if you've seen them film, color was very important. So in a way, I think it was supposed to be 12 or 13 million in black and white, and Fox came back and said, we'll give you 19 and a half if you do it in color. And of course, the vision, when you read the script, you realize you need some money to help tell the story, and to build the sets, because we shot 2/3 on studio and 1/3 on location. And somehow or other, we stretched out that money. I just looked up this morning the call sheets, and we had 57 days of main, and we had those cheated days of pre-shoot days, so that's 59. And then we had 4 second unit, which wasn't really second unit because it was Guillermo again, and the same DP. We just reduced the unit to do the tank work with the bathroom and some other small things. So 63 days on that kind of budget. But we had to really set a tone on it, and I think because the script was so descriptive, it was not easy, but it was a lot easier. The first day, I'll give you an anecdote of Guillermo and his vision. This was about 10 weeks out, or maybe even less, maybe 9 weeks out when he first arrived. And he said, let's pull out your color wheel or color fan book, and it was the Benjamin Moore ones. And we pulled out all of them, not just the little one that covers them all in little small things. We pulled out the big ones, and we went through every deck, and just gut feeling, we'd go through and he'd say, that one. And we'd tag it for a particular character. And so we tagged these various colors as we went through. And there were way too many colors, obviously, by the time we were finished. And then he did the same thing with Louis, the costume designer, so that we could be, the tone could be uniform and work together. And then, of course, I could distill those colors, and we associated certain colors with the antagonists, and the protagonists had different things, which I think is fairly explanatory in the film. But the fact that Guillermo had an idea of, the once black and white movie, he had the idea of these colors for the particular characters was very helpful, because we had very little time, and my education as an architect beforehand, and we don't deal with color very much, so I always have a hard time. Color is my hardest part, and I think I get there eventually, but it's really difficult for me, and my art director, I always tell him, I'm going to be procrastinating to the last minute on the colors, so you have to hound me and hound me and hound me to get those colors, because I will hold on, because I'm nervous about them. The space comes naturally or easily to me because of my education, I think. So anyway, that's my thing. With a very short time, great to have a director that has a strong vision. If you have more time, it can also be fantastic, because then you can imbue the whole script with your, we're all a little bit egotistical, so you can put your vision forward, but it's quite, I think it's better when you have the director has the vision already.
And that's good. It's interesting, because your descriptions, you think, I think sometimes the assumption is the director comes in with a really specific thing, and you have to be, and you're stuck in a box. Not at all in these 3 instances, which is really great. I mean, and the results are obvious, so congratulations. Interesting. I mean, that amount of time is crazy. I mean, I was talking to Wynn Thomas, who's an old friend, and we did a film together in the 90s, and it was like that. It was a 4-week prep, 6-week shoot for a film called Wag the Dog. So I sympathize.
Sometimes,
although you had, we had a lot to do too.
Sometimes, like I said, a restrictive time, you have to just, you have to really just go with your gut. You can't overthink things, and I often find, even when I was back in architecture school, I was mentioning this yesterday on the boat to someone. I always find the first gut feelings that you have, instinctual feelings, are often the strongest. I remember in our education, we were doing very simple studies with simple shapes and simple objects, a really restrictive number, and we have to place them on a board, a 9-square grid, and we had to figure out, compositions from it. And usually, I'd throw down these very limited pieces to create something that we'd spend another week trying to develop, and it always end up, well, not always, but most of the time, it seemed to end up in some version of that first one that I've put down. So I think you have to trust some of your gut instincts, and of course, you'll be pushed by producers and sometimes directors in different directions, but I think you have to really go with your gut so often.
I really agree with you in the same. Sometimes the less time I have, the more creative I become, and something come out which I was not expecting, but because of the lack of time and money. Really interesting.
I'm a bit slower. it's because I'm Canadian. I don't
Longer
know, but
film.
Now.
I'm a huge soft prep lover, like, and just like.
Is that the name of your new album?
Sorry, what?
Soft Prep Lover?
Yeah. No, but it's like you take your time, and that's way before obviously pre-production starts. So when pre-production starts, all the ideas are actually anchored. So when we start production, then we can actually communicate. You know, obviously the director has approved everything, but then we can communicate to everybody in the team what's the game plan and what's the. Actually, we made the recipe, and now we created the recipe. Now let's cook all together. And everybody obviously brings in their little 2 cents, but there's a really strong vision when we start pre-production. So yeah.
I'm out of order again here, but I kind of like that. Because this last discussion brought up this next question, which is, and Anne, I'll ask you first, because I'm going to bring up specific films. We talked about this at the Zoom call.
What is
All of you, and I'm going to pick 3 films, one for each of you, have really strong elements. Let's take Midnight in Paris. I will say also, the new look has an element of this, but particularly Midnight in Paris, there's a density of beautiful set decoration which really tells us where we are. Not just the period, and not in a way, it is the character, but it also has this feeling. So when you're in, I'm trying to remember the apartments now, in a character's apartment, it really immediately gives you a feeling, not just of period, it does, but also of who that person is. Not in a schematic way, but in an emotional way. And I just feel like, yeah, and here's one of your mood boards. So can you talk about that process of maybe with that film or other films, wherever that leads you? But I feel like it's so strong in your work, and find it really compelling.
You mean, how do I end up doing this? The question is about going to the detail or going to
like how you come up
this?
with that detail, because it contributes so strongly.
So for Midnight in Paris, I went very, very far in research, but not Google things, but finding videos of the period and everything. And Gertrude Stein, if it's this one, same thing. But I always see the character and create the world around them. For example, I realized that Gertrude Stein was collecting some smoke-saying cigarettes there. So I made in the set a collection of them, and all the detail in the sets are based on my research and my vision of how I would live if I was there. She was collecting art, she was writer as well. So I think I really like to go through the detail, and as well, what made the mood of Midnight is the collaboration with Darius on the light and the shades and the colors of the shades and the intensity of the lights, and everything in this movie has been really thought of. So I think it's I can't let the character not be at their home, Even if you open the drawers, you will find things that the actor can play with, or on the desk there will be something that can relate to something. And I don't know, maybe we spoke about that of Ray Fiennes. Ray Fiennes doing M in James Bond, and the set decorator calling me and saying, what can I put on the desk that he will connect to? So I knew he liked some Russian books, and I said, why don't you put an invite to his movie I did with him in Paris, like you're invited to this premiere of The White Crow, and a post-it call Anne, and he went in and he was laughing. He said, where is the set decorator? Because he really felt it's the book he likes, friends he knew. So that's this kind of detail that with my set decorator, we put in, and really, I think it's make the set live in. And in the new look, the same way, everything was thought about around the character and the script, but the characters and what I imagine he will be doing at this period as well. I don't know if I answer your question.
No, it's, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a beautiful work.
Thank you.
Denise, so we'll talk about Dune, if you want to. The thing, and I think one of the, and we talked about this on the Zoom call, one of the signature things that sets the feeling of that film is scale. And I mean, part of that comes from the Frank Herbert novel, obviously.
Absolutely.
It's just, but you, I mean, there's an aspect of it in the David Lynch Dune, and then you can see some of the gestures of the Jodorowsky Dune, but yours is of a different order. How do you, when you started, and obviously that was an element, how did you approach that in terms of your dealing with scale?
Well, you're absolutely right. When you talk about Frank Herbert, in the book, he actually mentions that the residency on Arrakeen is the biggest residency ever built by humankind. So, and it was obviously built by a colonial entity. So that was a show of force, and that's why, you know, there's the influence of the obvious influence of brutalism in that, because also in the Soviet years, brutalism was used for that purpose as well. But also it's the story of Paul Atreides, and we all felt that seeing small characters in a big environment was quite telling for the journey, that he was like, again, a world bigger that he doesn't understand. It's like, it's part of the storytelling. But how we went about to do those scenes, those sets, that's a different story. I remember the first day that we actually showed Legendary, the studio behind Dune, the art book, the Bible, before we started. So we were in a meeting room in Los Angeles, and everybody was, oh, great. Wow. But then there's the head of production who came to me, says, these are all very nice, pretty images, but on a practical aspect. I said, yes. And he goes, how do you think you're going to achieve that? It's like this, how are you going to build these sets? And I said, Herb, I'm going to be very honest with you. Some sets I know because they're contained. Some sets I think I know, because that was my biggest movie. I've never done a movie that scale, so it was a bit ridiculous. And and then I said, but again, I need to be honest with you. Some of these sets, I have no idea. But the thing that I'm pretty sure of is that this group of people, like Denis obviously, but Greg Fraser, you know, Paul Lambert, we're all there. We're all going to figure it out. And that's something about Denis' vision. I'm going to go I'm going to start another story. So
Okay.
So that's something that Denis, the best moment of those on those movies, it's when we are called for a methodology meeting. These are amazing. It's like all head of departments, we sit around the table,
Yep.
and then Denis comes out of his office and distributes, you know, the storyboards, because the storyboards use all the sets and the environments that whether their locations are set, but then it's what Denis really is imagining, what he's dreaming of doing in those environments, and we all look around and we go like, holy, this is how the hell are we going to do that? And that's where the collaborative effort and we all leave our egos outside the door. And it's like everything, those meetings are fantastic because everybody is allowed to say anything, even though it can sound really stupid. Because a stupid idea can, someone else grab it and go, well, wait a minute, maybe not. And the thing in that group of people, going back to the sets, it's that there's no way that we will change a visuals, like a set, because we can't do it. We figure it out together. Whether it's, we analyze the image, okay, well, it's basically, this set is about a shadow, a big shadow casted on sand. So because we need to create the light environment around the character, the proper light environment. So, okay, we need the sun, we need a shadow, we need the sand, we need a place where the actors are going to be interacting, getting into that room. The rest of it, we need to have the light that's going to bounce from it, the right light color. So we don't want to use green screen or blue screen. We want to use boards or screens that will bounce the right color tone on the skin and the costumes. So with that thinking outside the box, we come with sometimes solutions that may be totally insane. And there's this set, this set. This set is the Nexus on Dune Part 1, and that was a set that was, for us, impossible. And the story behind that really shows that filmmaking is really a collective effort. And so it was one of my art directors who came up with the Gergely Rieger from Budapest, who said, okay, to do that, because we realized at one point we need the shadow, we need the cast of the shadow, we need okay. So between the 2 stages, 4 stages, between stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 at Origo, there's enough distance. And we could actually, with wires, put fabric. And the fabric, obviously we need a day, first problem, we need a day that there's no wind. But with a retractable thing, that, the sun will create the right shadow. We need to have sand. Budapest, super rainy during that summer. So we hired agricultural equipment that would turn over the sand and dry the sand. And then we cladded between the stages the right color. But there was also another problem, is that the sun, the way that those studios are lined up, the sun only casts that shadow between 10:45 in the morning and 11:20. Okay? So, and those are moments where I call them crazy enough to work, because the whole team is on, everybody knows about the difficulty. Everybody knows that, okay, we need to achieve this. So everybody's got their blind side covered. And we've got, obviously, we came up with that. I sold the idea first to Greg, to Paul. We went to see Denis. What do you think? Oh, I think it's a great idea. We went to see the first AD. Okay, how do we manage that in your schedule? Because we don't want to lose your time. So he, and obviously production was on it as well. So he actually integrated within the schedule 5 windows of opportunity with the same cast. So if we could not shoot that, we could go on a set and shoot something else. Anyway, so we got it at the second try.
So
it's crazy.
It's not just scale of what you see on screen. It's literal scale of execution
Oh,
in this case to get it right. I mean,
no. We build
and there's a lot of visual effects involved too. But
obviously there's a lot of visual effects involved, but and that's something with Denis. Denis likes immersive sets. Like even on arrival, the VFX supervisor said, we could do that on a green screen. He said, no, we need to build that 120 feet long. We need to, Wow. So anyways. Sorry, I speak too loud.
No worries. So Paul, Shape of Water. so much of, I mean, you touched on palette a bit, on color, but it was also sort of, it seems to me, and patina, texture is such a huge part of the way that film delivers its emotional impact, it seems to me, in the environments that you created. Obviously, it's an emotional story, but the sets are like, well, in all of your cases, they're like, it's like a character. I mean, is that something you use? Is that more distinct to that film? Is that a process you go through with every film, or?
I mean, obviously, it depends on the story. I mean, and director's vision. I've had to go the opposite way, where everything was very cartoony and no aging, and I didn't like to do that. I felt very restricted. So, but Guillermo likes a lot of aging, and Dan Louston, the DP, is very moody with his lighting. So you have to be quite strong with. You have to be quite aggressive with the aging to sometimes to see it in the shadows, at least. And I had a very, this is the thing. We were having a conversation earlier with the scenic artists are magicians. They're the most important person in your construction and scenic crew. I think you can almost always find someone to be able to construct something, even if they've never built a movie set before. People understand building. People don't always understand the science and sort of wizardry of scenic artists, and they need time to do it. It usually seems to cost as much as the construction, often. And in this case, I got in trouble several times about the budget for, our scenic. I got reamed out several times with the producer, because it was costing so much, and why do they need all that time, And I said, well, of course, Guillermo's there on one side. He's also a producer, telling me we need it. And then the other producer, who's the money guy, is like, well, you got to do it somehow else. I'm like, well, you tell the director, because he will tell me that he needs it, and so we have to figure out a way to do it. In this particular case, we did it by reusing a lot of scenery from a series that Guillermo had been producing before and after, and there was the hiatus period in between. So we were able to save construction money by reusing like a riser, like this set here, the apartment. That riser was an existing riser from this Mimic, the Strain, not Mimic, the Strain series. It wasn't quite in the right place. It wasn't quite the right height. But Dan and I had to explain to Dan, the DP, I know there's not enough room out the back window there, really, for you to get the backlight in, but I don't really have a choice, because we were really struggling with the numbers. So he would agree. He compromised. It was all a lot of compromising. We couldn't afford the VFX out the window for. Luckily, we're talking about tone here again, and I'll diverge a little bit. I think there were 56 slug lines or whatever, but the reality was there wasn't a ton of sets. So you're able to, on a relatively limited budget, control the tone and keep the tone uniform. With a bigger budget, it still is difficult, but you have the money to help solve that problem. But when you don't have that much, it helps if the script is a little bit restrictive in scope. So we had so many shots in this apartment and the one neighboring the other side of this arch, and out that window, of course, we couldn't afford VFX in every shot. But there was another set from this previous TV series that had like those critical metal windows, industrial windows, and brick flats. It was an interior set, but it had pillars and things, and so we just basically said, well, let's take those, let's not scrap them. Let's take those and we'll reuse them to stick them outside. And there was just enough room for Dan to put his lights beyond that to backlight the window. But to get back to your question about patina, the story we had here, like the backstory I had at least for this particular apartment versus the neighboring one, which wasn't nearly as rough, was it was water damaged. There was a small fire in this area which was used to store film, and film's quite flammable and everything. So we imagined that above this movie theater there was the backstory was there was a small fire, water damage. So the roof is leaky. There's stains on the wall. The floorboards on this side are down to the subfloor, which is diagonal here, and the other apartment didn't get the damage. It's got the regular strip oak floor on top. So that way we could let the I mean, not that you'd really have the light from the movie theater coming below. We had the idea that when the movie's playing below, there's this magical light coming through the floorboard somewhat, which gives us a little bit like being underwater, you know, like the caustic light. And then, of course, in the ceiling there was holes and water. I mean, the movie's called Shape of Water, but this room was to evoke the imagery of water, and her furniture with Shane, set decorator, and Jeff. They got, you know, couches. We were talking about couches on the last one. We upholstered them in an appropriate sort of teal blue fabric, but the most important part was the back was like this nice rolling thing. The wallpaper up in the top there was evocative of scales, which comes back later for the creature when they're brought in. And the wall on the right-hand side was. Guillermo said, I don't know, this wall over here has got to be an art wall of some kind. It's got to be really distressed and will have no art on it, but it wants to have character. And I procrastinated for quite a long time to wonder what to do there. And I thought, well, maybe we can make it like a river. You know, we can do perhaps a bit of a river. And I thought, well, what's the most? I used to wear this T-shirt, which is the Hokusai Great Wave, the Japanese print, the big wave with the guys on the boat. And I was wearing it one day, and I thought, Jesus, you know. That is a very iconic image of water. So let's, and I should have put the images underneath of the underpainting of that. But my scenic artist was a genius. We laid it up digitally first, and then he painted this underpainting of the wave. And Guillermo walked by one time when it was literally looked like a giant wave but with all the foam was all this effervescent plaster and everything. And he was like, "Oh my God, Paul, that's like so literal." I mean, I did say I wanted an art wall, but that is incredibly literal. And I said, no, don't worry. It's only like 1/3 done. That's just the understudy. And then eventually, again, the magicians of scenic art, they layered it all up, and it becomes just an interesting shaped wall. I mean, no one's necessarily going to see that shape, but it was just a way of evoking that image, and it had more meaning to us involved. You know, the wave was like shaped to be up over the door, so anyone who coming through that thing was about to get walloped with this big wave of water. And so in that sense, in this particular set, the patina was very important, and less so in some of the other more modern things to contrast the two. And okay, so this was the other half, and this fellow is an artist, Giles, and the color. We're talking about color. Early on, Guillermo had put golds and beiges and earth tones for this particular character. So we found wallpaper that was similar, and we kept it all in a very different thing. So, you know, we would cut from one side of the hallway, which was in the middle, we'd run across the hall into the other, and it was an incredibly different feeling. And Dan would light this side, because you have to, you know, we as you say, it's a collaboration with the DP and the director and the props and set tech and everyone, visual effects. So on this side, he would, because we didn't often have to, you couldn't see the front windows when you went back and forth too often, but he'd carefully light this side with a more warm light and that with a steel blue light, so that the lighting helped a lot. And I had this conversation earlier with Patrice about, you know, color is so hard, and so often it's a big commitment, and you place it on a big wall, and you go, fuck. That's not quite what that chip. The chip that's that big.
It's a commitment.
This doesn't look like the Benjamin Moore chip.
Anymore, you're getting married. It's like, yeah.
It's like, fuck. So, and then you can go, well, you know, Dan would light, and I've worked with Dan since, and he said, well, don't worry, because I'd be like, God, you got to help me out here. I've committed, and it's, I'm not liking it. Because don't worry, we can. With lighting, you can adjust it slightly. So we would work together, and he'd gel the light a little bit different. I'm not saying in this particular set, but in general, I've had that help from the collaboration of a DP with your color. So not all lost if you screw up with the color, as long as you have a good relationship with your DP.
Yeah, we had a little bit of that experience on Tombstone. I was the art director on this. It dates me. Tombstone, the Western, and the set, for whatever reason, the big town set, the backlot set, was painted in colors that didn't exist in that part of Arizona in the early 1880s. But Billy Fraker, the storied DP who did Rosemary's Baby, did Bullet, all these early films, amazing. He thankfully toned it down because it looked like Knott's Berry Farm. And it's meant to be the wide ERP and the ERPs and the, anyway, so yes, I've had that experience where Billy, thank you, it made the set. So I think we're getting close to Q&A, but I wanted to ask briefly, especially because we have younger students and younger designers here, and I think sometimes there's the mistaken impression that those of us who've been at it for a while, every film is successful, it always works. Those awards just come apace. It's just, that's life, and obviously we know that's not true, so I think it would be interesting to, a brief anecdote about, and I've conflated two questions here. Is there a project you can talk about, and maybe relate it to tone, where you took a big tonal gesture, and it didn't work? Or if it's easier, if it gets at the question, I'll give you options A and B. Was there a project where you were not able to set the tone for whatever reason, the director being tyrannical or some other reason? You can pick between those two. Brief answers so that we can get to our Q&A. Anne, or whoever wants to go first. Sure, whoever wants to go first. Anne, why don't you go?
I know, okay.
Yeah.
So, something we're not very proud of. No, it's not that exactly. So, I once did a film with Ed Vero as his art director in Budapest of Prague. Yeah. And we had to, as usual, to do Paris in Prague. And it was, it's car chase, you know. So with Chili Aziz, the set decorator, we prepared very well all the lower part, thinking and speaking with the VFX. They would say, no, don't work on the top because we are going to work on it, you know, we're going to make the building look like Paris. So all the back of it, the lower part was, you know, trying to make Prague Paris, and we managed well to have the iconic landmark, like make the audience think we are in Paris because it's a car chase. So. But at the end, when I saw the movie, they did nothing on the top. So you have the bottom part is Paris and the top is Prague. So
love it when that happens.
So
yeah. Paul?
You can't trust the VFX.
Paul? There's a movie, my first film that I designed was a small movie. It was a $6 million movie, and it was, you know, you read the script and it was all set in very rich, wealthy people. You know, every person, almost every person in the script lived in a big house with, you know, it was written as, you know, expensive furniture and art and things like that. But of course, I didn't really have the money to decorate these to evoke the right mood that I figured it should be. So I ended up thinking, well, you know, sometimes it's easier to do quite a stark, stripped-out minimalism, and you can just have one perfect couch, and you know, you can even fake a modern piece of art by just painting a long rectangle or something of a nice bright color, perhaps. Anyway, long story here. The short story is that eventually, when I saw the film, I realized, fuck, it looked like everyone lived almost in the same house because it was too uniform. And you know, I know that they hung out in the same circles and they went to the art galleries and had these weird fetish things, but it just was, to me, a failure. I didn't voice it to anyone, but that was my opinion. So you have to be kind of careful. You have to step back a little bit. And just to answer your question about students I'll switch it a little bit here. For locations are incredibly important. You know, you may not have the money. You know, we talk about these things and setting the tone and being able to change the colors and control the colors for everything. But the reality is, if you're on a small movie or a commercial or something like that, that you don't have a lot of, I mean, you have a great script perhaps, but you don't have the monies or the resources to help control the tone. The most important thing is, in my books, on any scale film, is the location scouting. You can say so much with architecture. Like I said at the very, very beginning, you know, claustrophobic space. grand space. You can do it with architectural styles, like Shape of Water, we contrasted brutalism, you know, for the institution and sort of the oppressiveness compared to like a 19th century more ornate kind of architecture, even though it was all beat up and worn down. That's much more romantic. So you can do that just by finding and utilizing existing spaces. So no matter what happens, you know, on a project, if you have to be able to allocate a certain amount of enough time to do the location scouting, or you do a lot of it yourself through Google searches and whatnot. But it's, I think, crucial on any scale to help control the tone or set the tone is the architecture and the spaces or the environments or the landscapes. But I mean, it's very, very important. And you don't have to do anything if you find the right, if you spend the time to find that right location. You don't have to do anything.
No, I agree with you, Paul. That's a very good point. The right location doesn't cost more than the wrong location. You know, it's the same price. So just need to pick the right one. But so for my worst.
Your brief anecdote of mortification. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Brief anecdote of mortification. What was that one?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm
Big swing that didn't work.
Oh my God, there's so many. Because I'm self-taught. I started doing music videos, then I moved on to commercials and doing short films. But since there was zero money, the great thing is that we were forgiven very, very fast, and we learned more from our mistakes than from our good things. So. Music videos where I needed to build a big cross. I built it in my mom's, my parents' basement, and I used like hockey sticks to reassemble. It was just like swinging like that. It was ridiculous. We were shooting in an old quarry during spring, and I intendedly was. Going towards the wall of the quarry, so I was hoping that a rock would fall on my head. So people, instead of complaining, they would just say, "Oh no, poor Patrice! Oh, he's dead now." But I did also the same mistakes as Paul. You know, my first movie of the week, my first movie, which was a movie of the week. I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to do something very stylish, and I forgot the basic. It's about the character. So everybody looked the same, and I thought everything was super stylish. And in the end, nobody could understand what character's house. Right? And I was like really going to my own personal taste and forgetting. I was like, and that's something that it's not about your taste. It's about the character's taste. It's never about you. It's about the story. So, yeah.
Great.
I could go on with other mistakes.
I think we all have them. I have one, but we're short of time, so I will forego as I am the host and must move things along. We've got a few minutes for questions. 16 minutes and 49 seconds, I'm being told. So do we have questions from folks out there? I see Jay here in the front row. Jay, I'm going to, shameless plug here, Jay's a student at UCLA, currently in the program and one of my students, so I just wanted to, I know that's mortifying for you, but I had to point it out. Sorry.
Yeah, now it has to be really good, I guess. In terms of, in terms of setting the tone, are there any kind of rituals for like your own process? You talked about going through the scripts and kind of writing out the emotional beats for the script itself, but do you have to kind of set the tone for yourself in any way, whether it's sort of how you have your space or something that you listen to, or does that change kind of depending on the project?
My space, I need to play some music, and music I think is such a strong communicator of emotions. So I've got like albums dedicated almost to every movie that I worked on, and I need to be in a mood. I play the music, and it puts me in the zone, in the right zone. And I had a director that I was working with a lot, unfortunately passed away. But he would send me the script and send me a playlist, and I needed to react with visuals. So that was our way of working together. Yeah. So yeah, music.
Great. Paul or Ann, go ahead.
I'm afraid I don't have anything exciting as that. Often we're stuck in these, when you first start these films, you're stuck in some random blank wall facing a brick building or something with no character whatsoever. So there's really no tone around the space that I'm in. You have to kind of help develop it. I mean, eventually you might start bringing things and adorning the walls, but so often when you first start, it's pretty bleak. So you have to internalize and hopefully set the tone from your own memories. And I think the external forces in the particular workspaces unfortunately aren't always fantastic.
Any thoughts?
You're talking about our home, is that right?
Your own space, right, Jay? Where you're working and how that inspires you or doesn't.
So for me, I'm coming from a very classical family and inherited a lot of really period movie, furniture. So what I'm doing, I'm mixing things. So I keep a bit of my family, so it makes me think I'm safe. And I bring in a lot of things from India, from everywhere, and mix everything. And I love colors, so I play on colors often. And it's like a secret place. And I have the nature next to it, so I resource myself in the garden and long walk. So that's more, it's not like the movies, but, and I have always a little souvenir from a film, so, or little or big, because in my garden I've got the chairs that I bought from Magic in the Moonlight. So they are there, so I've got some painting of something, or just, it doesn't show, but if I'm going to play a game now with my friend, it's which movie it's coming from, so it's really, and then all you can see that in my environment. So. Yeah,
I remember, thanks. I love that you have these little sort of talismans almost that you carry with. That's nice. It's a small anecdote about that. I was on American Horror Story, and we were at Paramount, and the producers had taken all of the offices with windows, of course, and they kept the blinds closed, so they never had light in their offices, but they knew they had the window, and that spoke to status, obviously. We were on the inner side, no windows at all, and I was resentful, but it was American Horror Story, which is dark and difficult and with that tone. And I realized by the end of that season that it actually really helped me. I wasn't in a great mood when I was in the office, but that actually worked in terms of the design development. So I guess we do suffer for our art in that regard.
But it's true, it's inspired, my upbringing inspired me for period movie, because I've been brought up in all this, like antique shops, Yeah. So I can straight away see if it's the right period or not. So it helped me in the Midnight in Paris, the new look. And so it's interesting. But it's very difficult for me to do something like more 70s or 80s. Because that's not where I came from, so it's really interesting.
Yeah.
You bring a bit of yourself.
Stepping out of yourself.
Yeah.
More questions? I see a hand there. There's one down here too. I don't know. Let's see who we get to first. Okay. And then next we'll go down here.
So you all talked about how you start working with the script and you develop your setting, so you're setting the tone with the emotions of the characters and what you see in the script. What happens if you start and there is no script, or it changes so much that it's so different? How do you work with that? Because sometimes there is no script in the beginning. I know that some series start and they are just not done with the script at all.
There's no script? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I didn't know. You guys good?
This is interesting.
Is there a source material, like a short story or a book, or?
There might be. I mean, I I just worked on a series, and in the art department, and the scripts kept changing so much the whole time, and it changed the sets again and again, and that was quite hard to work with.
I mean, I just finished.
Go ahead.
I did finish it. I've done one series recently, and we had the same sort of thing. We had little Bibles, though we had little descriptions of what the scripts might be, and we were promised before we started shooting that we'd have all 9 episodes written. But of course, it was a lie. We had I
all
think
been there.
4 and 4.5 maybe. And then the strike happened, and so we were promised again that, oh, don't worry, even though it was a writer's strike, somehow or other the scripts were going to be written over that writer's strike. And when we came back in 3 months, they would all be ready, it'd be perfect, we'll be all ready to go, we'll be able to just blitz right into it. Well, as you imagine, they weren't. But we had, you know, the producers or the director or the showrunner, in this case, they just, you know, we had this outline and we had a few scripts. So in this particular case, you set the tone in the first couple, and it wants to be homogeneous through the whole thing. I mean, we didn't, in this particular storyline, we didn't go to, in every script we weren't in a different environment or a different kind of location. So we were fortunate that we were able to just react quickly to when the scripts did arrive, but the tone was kind of set. And everyone on the team, costumes, props, set decoration, we all knew, we all had a sort of a guide or a Bible of what the look of the thing was. Well, it was period anyway, it's 1962, so we knew we were not going to go any closer, any newer than that, and you can, you know, we had something. So, but it's an interesting question, because I think it happens more often than not on a series.
Sure does.
I have an experience on the new look. There's 10 episodes, and the last one is set in Avenue Montaigne, in Dior's salon and house. And everywhere it's iconic, the stairs, the staircase, and the salon and the cabin. It's very particular. So when I started, the 3 first episodes were written, the rest no. And I started to tell them, because they told me, you can build the suite of the Riz, you can build Dior's apartment, you can build this. That's it, the rest no. And I was thinking, where are we going to do this fashion show, because it's so iconic? And no one answered. The showrunner was, he had a problem. The producer was, so what I did, I drew it. I made all the construction plan. I made the budget. And I went to the writer, the only writer left, and I said, you have to help me. We need to build this, because we can't do it at the real place, and I don't want to look stupid and doing it in a staircase in one of the Haussmannian buildings. So we fought like mad, because it was 2 months of building. You know, you can't build that in 2 seconds. And it's really difficult, because you have to have people on it. So it's like architecture, really. So I made the bet, and we went there, and it was nearly 1 million, which is not a little, it's big. And we force, and at one point, the producer realized, oh yes, because they called Dior and say, can we come and see your place? And it's all different now, and you can't shoot there only Monday on the morning. So we made really push with this writer, and they suddenly said, oh yes, and they suddenly found the money, and it was the iconic, I mean, this, even Christian Dior was saying, oh, and you know, because it's very simple, but it's the, how do you say, l'écran du fashion show. Comment tu dis un écran? Yeah, it's the background. So even if it's really, colors are very soft, there was some beautiful dresses we had to show. It's a showcase. And at the end, they needed it, and it was ready for the last episode, and they told me, oh, we should have done it before, because they needed it for the... So the director of the 7, 8 episode was jealous, because the thing was going up. And we have that. If you want it, it's for rent.
I've never done. I've never been in this situation because I've never done television series. But yeah, the only thing that could relate, but it doesn't really relate, is like when I accompany a director, a writer, into the writing process, and it's just like outlines, and then I go like, oh well, maybe I suggest sets with illustrations and stuff, and that helps the process. But never while we were shooting. It's so I've never been into that, or developing things based on a book or but not
You're
while
lucky.
shooting. I'm lucky. I know I'm
You're lucky.
I am.
My anecdote is the series Lost, for which I did the pilot. I don't know if the image is there or not, but there was absolutely no script. There was an idea that was handed by Lloyd Braun of ABC to J.J. Abrams to do, and I think it came out of reality initially, somewhere. Like people on an island, maybe a plane crash, something, I don't know, they're at each other's throats, whatever. And so he picked it up and was developing it. There was absolutely no script. I had a 5-minute meeting with him where he both decided to hire me and told me what it wasn't even a story or scenario. It was, okay, there's a large body airplane crash on an island, and then we go from there. And that was how we developed it. And we didn't have a script until almost literally we were shooting. So we built on the beach in Hawaii. We bought a plane in the Mojave, cut it up into pieces, shipped it over on 2 barges, reassembled it on the beach and in the jungle in 4.5 weeks. Based on, there's my sketch. Oh, look at that. Ooh, I've never seen it that big. That's scary. Wow. So that was based on that log line only. And then I was literally off to Hawaii the next day on a plane. I didn't even have my deal memo signed. So, but sometimes it results in, yes, it's a literal plane wreck, but the show was not a plane wreck. So it turned out all right. Do we have time for one more question, folks? Do we? No? No. Oh, sorry. Okay, looks like we're done.
There was one there.
Oh, I see. 2. Okay, I know there was one over there, but we only have 2 minutes. I'm being told by that we don't. So I'm sorry about that, guys. But thank you very much. What a lovely panel. Great.